Hello, guys. Welcome. You guys should be able to hear me. Can you guys hear me now? Can you hear me now? Hold on. No, you guys should be able to hear me. Canadian Mama A, yes. You guys should have sound now. Yep. Welcome to Truth and Transparency. I didn't start yet, guys. So you guys are all good. What you guys are going to be looking at here is my digital timeline. This is what people have said. So I filled it in based on what they said. Then I'm going to show some huge discrepancies. I'm going to talk about some things that I've been able to come across maybe in past episodes that have answered some more questions. I'm going to give you guys some of those answers. And then we're going to bring in what is being discussed today, which is the title of the episode, Everybody Needs a Priest. There is a last name with the gentleman, Priest. So again, hopefully everybody had a great weekend. Thank you guys for being here. You guys get an episode live with me with Sunset Secrets 2. So again, what we're looking at here is Officer Naim begins his shift at 3 p.m. Okay. So Officer Naim is at 3 p.m. There was that 911 phone call between 4:30 and 5:30 made by the sisters. They seen Naim walking. They also seen drinking beer was too sweet, these members. And it looked like Officer Naim was going to get jumped. So there was this supposed 911 call. This is going to be the kids that went over to the basketball courts. There's been discrepancies of whether it's been 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock. People were leaving out sooner than others. Okay. So now, at the time where it says Linmar and the number here, that's going to be like the address number that at the time where they lived at. And we're going to get into that down the road, but that's going to matter to show, like, you know, how close they were to being able to be right at home if they were walking and things like that. Sunset in Aliquippa, again, this is important. 6:28 p.m. is the sunset in Aliquippa that night. Okay. Try to help those people out that are blind, like myself. Is that better? So, again, we're going to get into then right here is people that were on the basketball courts, what time that they were kind of leaving. 7:15, 7:15, 7:23. The different sightings. Now, told cops about shots by the court at the scene right there, 7:45 to 8. This right here. This is where it says Matt Dillard, Latoya, Marcus, Zeke Hayes, where this is telling the cops, oopsies, why is it doing that? This is where the cops, this is when we were Cassidy and Sean Young are saying that this is the report of shots being fired from the cemetery, okay? Well, that is not what's in the report by the kids, by these people. They, in fact, told cops about the shots by court and that they're pointing at the scene. Then no one ever said anything about a cemetery. And you see this time frame of 7:45 to 8. So I did some digging, and it is confirmed without a doubt, okay, that the first call that goes out, okay, is shots fired in Linmar. Or I'm sorry, shots fired at the cemetery. Shots fired at the cemetery, okay? And then it was 15 to 30 minutes afterwards that the call then came out, officer down, meaning that that's when his body was found by Sean Young and Cassidy, okay? And they then call out, remember, to right here. I personally interviewed some people that were at the Linmar market when they overheard officer down, and it was because Doug Edgel was at and inside the Linmar market, had his uniform on, and this person witnessed him, came over the radio, officer down, he ran out of the store, okay? Now, these names you're going to see here, which is Russell, Derek, Keir, and then Russell's girlfriend. That's who we're going to be talking about this episode, as well as Priest. Now, this is the big part of everything with the van. And this is what I was able to get some information on. Now, this was a big testimony in Jamie Brown's case with right here, okay, Richard at 7:45, between 7:45 and 8 o'clock, he says that he walked down to the substation and he talked to Officer Naim, okay, putting him alive. He said like that he was down there around 8. All right, so this is a really big point and piece with who's the last person to see Officer Naim alive, and they're leaning towards, and this is the person. And he was on the witness list for the state. Richard Phillip. Okay. Now, this is how, according to my source, how things would play out when this would have happened, because people did lock their keys in their cars. When this was brought to their attention, if you were a police officer, you asked the person that brought this to your attention that they, hey, my van, locked the keys in it. Can you help me out? Can you pop my lock? No, we can't do that. But what we do is we can call Junax for you. Or if you have AAA, we can call Heinman's. Okay. So if you have AAA, they go the route that actually Philip went that route, Richard that night, because that's who came there. If someone doesn't have AAA, they call Junax, which is the tow trucking service right across the street from the police department on Franklin. And this is something that Officer Naim, being the person that he is, if somebody was to come to him and say they locked their keys in the car, Officer Naim's typical response would be this. We don't do that anymore, but here, we can help you out. Do you want me to make a phone call? Do you have AAA? Like, there would have been a bunch of questions. Officer Naim wouldn't have just been like, peeked his head out. Oh, no, we don't do that. And then close the door on him. Okay. There would have been the personality of Officer Naim is very helpful. Is he would have said, okay, well, do you want us to call these people, or do you have AAA? Do you not? Things like that. Well, for Hyman's to go there, it would have been a situation that AAA was involved, which is very good news for Jamie Brown and us. AAA keeps amazing records, by the way. So And the big thing is remember, this person at trial is basically putting Officer Naim alive because they're claiming that they talked to him. Okay. So this time is so important because yes, 8 o'clock would matter. 7:45, yeah, that all matters. Hell, was it at 7:15? Because we all know how long it takes for AAA to get on it. So that avenue is being searched as I speak with you guys in terms of being able to get the records. Like I said, AAA, you're a member of AAA. That's able to be researched and searched and seeing what time somebody was sent out. So also remember they left a hospital. And according to these people, if you look up here, Gordon and them went to go pick up at Aliquippa at the UPMC in a van at 7 o'clock. And it's literally 5 minutes down the road. Okay. And then they leave and they said that they go straight back to Linmar. So if this is all happening at 7 and you go and you pick somebody up and you're not waiting, okay, is it by chance that this happened a lot earlier than you think? Did you see Officer Naim and did you really talk to him? How was that determined? So remember, this is like a huge question mark, but this is really important because right here, then we get to this part. According to James McTaggart, who actually owned the van, because this is how this played out. He locks the keys in the car. He goes down. He asks. He comes back. He says he calls his boss, who's James. James then calls Hyman's. He doesn't say that I called AAA. Okay. He says that he called that place. He then leaves Bridgewater to drive and beats the guy from Hyman's. Well, according to Google Maps and all that stuff, wherever he was coming from, it was anywhere between 15 and 18-minute drive. So if he left at 8, he would arrive at 8:18. You guys, that is the same exact time, all right, that Officer Naim's body would have been being found and being called in as officer down. Okay. Now, per reports and per my sources, there was then, after the officer down, and officers were responding, and they were there within minutes. People were there within minutes. Okay. They secured the perimeter. Okay. Nobody was leaving, and nobody was coming in. Okay. To very, very good sources here, it was secure the perimeter, nobody's coming in, and nobody's leaving. So if you actually look and see what time, according to what they're saying, what time that auto service guy would have gotten there, and then them trying to leave Linmar after popping the lock with the van, all right, people weren't just leaving Linmar. Okay, it was being shut down. And if you go back and you look at all of their testimony and their reports, they all say they don't see anything as they are leaving. Meaning they don't see a bunch of cops coming. They don't see, they don't see anything. Okay, now, which again doesn't make any sense because we know how quickly all of these cops were there because we have the log. And, people from Raccoon, people from Hopewell, everybody was there by the time that literally before they would have left. Okay. You would have seen all of this commotion. You're right there, but they say they don't see any of it. So that's telling that they were already gone. Okay. Which, in a nutshell, basically where I'm getting at with all of this is I'm about to prove that there's no way that at 8 o'clock, this guy Richard saw and talked to Officer Naim at 8 o'clock because Officer Naim was already dead at 8 o'clock. Again, so this timeline is really important. Remember what I said also? Was it that he really saw Officer Naim? Could have been another police officer that was in there. Could he have never had done any of this and simply got these people to all lie? I mean, we're going to find out. Okay. Again, remember Joe Kirkland trying to say all this stuff. He's saying that he was at Swingers Lounge and he left, but he just left his girlfriend. So then why are you going up to your girlfriend's apartment? You know that she's not there. But that's when he supposedly ran into Jamie Brown. Again, all of this just totally not, just complete utter crap. Jamie Brown, at the time when Mojo's saying this, remember, he's on the phone. It's on his parents' or his mom's landline. I mean, just complete, fuckerage. Okay. Now we're going to get to this right here, which is this badge swipe. Officer Naim's badge swiped. 8/12. Okay, guys? I'm going to break it to you. I'm going to break it real simple because we're going to go back up here. Officer Naim was not alive at 8/12. So who swiped Officer Naim's badge? Okay. This is fact. All right. The officers are saying, think about this. The officers are letting you know in their reports and saying, just before 8 o'clock, we were up there because supposedly Officer Naim called and said, wanted to talk to Cassidy. Well, per two sources, that never happened over channel 1. So if that was to have happened, it had to be on channel 2 because you can do like directly with somebody else. But that did not go out over the main radio. Officer Naim, from a couple different sources, never asked for any type of help over channel 1. So now you got these officers, Cassidy and Young. All right. They're the ones that put the word out there to all of the officers and through the radio to say, shots have been fired at the cemetery. We're reporting to the cemetery. Okay. What did they just do by doing that? They took all the attention away from where? The actual crime scene. None of those witnesses that were the younger kids, teenagers, ever said anything about a cemetery. Every single report, interview is saying actually the shooting happened where the crime scene was. So why would officers make this up? Literally, it is not in any reports. No kid said shots came from the cemetery. Okay. And that this happened before 8 o'clock, just before 8 o'clock. Now, what that means, if shots were fired just before 8 o'clock, remember, then that's when Roberts is getting in his police vehicle down on Franklin at the main police station because he said he's going to go get coffee, but that's when he heard shots fired. If shots were fired, guys, that means Officer Naim is dead. Again, before 8 o'clock. Now, I was able to do some digging. And people were having a hard time getting in touch with Officer Naim that day. All right. And the thing that I paid a lot of attention to was the Darnell Hines interview when he claims that Officer Sonia Carter was sitting outside the substation. Well, when he was sitting outside the substation, that he saw Carter at the substation. Okay. And then I had to ask people that were familiar with these zones, you know, what is considered zone A, what's considered zone B, C, and stuff like that. But, you know, at the end of the day, we know this, that Carter agrees with Hines during that interview to say, like, yeah, she went there. She was there. Okay. And sources have leaked information about that during your shift, from like a 3 to 11 shift, it was something where officers would get together and go grab, you know, dinner. Maybe they weren't supposed to, maybe they were, and that was right around dinner time. So, but obviously nobody had dinner with Officer Naim that night. So now we come to why in the world would Officer Cassidy and Officer Young claim before 8 o'clock of a shooting if there wasn't a shooting yet? So then I had to make sure that what type of gap was there? What type of gap? What's the timing? Did this shots, you know, shots fired at the cemetery compared to then how many minutes had passed until you hear officer down, officer down? Well, I got that confirmation from, again, two very reliable sources saying that it was, you know, at least 15, 30 minutes. And that's right there. Okay. Think about that. 15, 30 minutes. So nobody sees anybody running at 8 or 8:15 or 8:30, because nobody would be running at 8:15 or 8:30, because that's not when the crime happened. And all the reports and everything that they wanted to go with, it was that Officer Naim was shot at 8:15. And the reason that they went ahead and had that time frame, okay, is because of Officer Naim's badge being swiped. Okay. Well, it's flat out impossible. Okay. You can't have the shots being going off at 7:50 to 8 o'clock. All right. Because those are the shots that killed the man. So therefore, he had to be dead then. And then why are two officers taking us completely away from where the crime scene actually happened and going the opposite way off to the cemetery? Nobody had to call 911, guys. Why? Because the cops were already on scene. They were already in Linmar. And these van guys, they don't see anything. They're able to just leave up out of there. Nobody stopped them. And how do I know this is important? Well, because then we come to tonight's episode, which is about Keir Thornton, Russell McKenzie, and Derek Hotman. And how do they fall into this? Well, they're around the age of Jamie Brown. Okay. And Russell McKenzie and Derek Cotman get in a vehicle. And they go and they pick up Keir Thornton, who does not live in Linmar, but lives in Aliquippa, just a couple minutes away. They go pick him up between 6 and 6:30. He gets picked up and he is brought directly back to Linmar. Okay. According to Russell McKenzie, again, him and Derek were both arrested. And we're going to get into all that today. But Russell McKenzie stated that on the day of the shooting of the police officer, that he and Derek Cotman were both in Linmar and were hanging out together. Stated that maybe an hour before the shooting, he was driving around Linmar with Derek when he saw Two Sweet on foot walking down the area of the Wanamaker's apartment. Stated that he stopped and talked to Two Sweet briefly. He asked Two Sweet if he needed a ride, and Two Sweet said something about maybe later, but not then. Stated that Two Sweet was wearing a leather jacket, which he thought was brown, and wearing gloves. Stated that he thought it was unusual because he never saw Two Sweet walking around Linmar. If you saw him on Linmar, he would be riding in some type of vehicle. He then said that he and Derek then continued around Linmar, and he parked his vehicle, and they got out and were on foot over near Shushu's apartment. Stated that Keir Thornton was also over there with them, and they were just standing there talking. Said that while they were hanging out over there, they saw Two Sweet again as he passed down through the middle of the apartments. Stated that Two Sweet just looked over at them and laughed and kept on going. Russell McKenzie then says, shortly then, after seeing Two Sweet in the middle walking, Keir Thornton, who didn't have a coat on, said he was cold and asked for a ride home. He said that he and Derek then took Keir home, dropped him off, and then returned directly back to Linmar. He said that it only took them 5 or 10 minutes before they were back in Linmar. I went ahead and I looked up the address, and it's just right there. He then said he parked the car and got back out and was standing around where Ellis came walking over to drink a 40 with them. Stated he was only standing there for about 10 minutes when the shots rang out. He said there were 6 to 8 shots, and when it occurred, Derek said, "You know what that was?" And Russell said he isn't sure what Derek meant by that. He just thinks he meant that those were gunshots. He did not believe that Derek had any knowledge that a cop had just been shot. He said that following the shots, he did not see anyone running or anything suspicious. Stated that he and Derek moved over to Derek's mother's apartment, and he passed his handgun to Derek to hide. He said that since a couple of his friends had been shot and killed, he had been carrying his gun with him when he is out and about. He said that him and Derek always would have, he always had his with him as well. He said that he had no knowledge of what was going down that night, but he knew that the police would be coming following the shots being fired, and he knew he didn't want to be caught carrying the gun. He said that he definitely did not know that a cop had been shot after he heard the gunshots. He said that it wasn't until after he had stopped as he was leaving Linmar that he became aware that a cop had been killed. He said he never saw Jamie Brown on Linmar at any time that day. And he also said that he never saw A.C. Taylor that day. A.C. Taylor, first time you guys are hearing this name, that is Jamie Brown's co-defendant. And we'll get into that. He said that he hasn't talked to Jamie Brown for months prior to that shooting. Russell further stated that as he and Derek moved to Derek's mother's apartment, he did talk to Ray Ross and Jamar Turner. While Derek was inside hiding the guns, Russell said that he did not believe that either Ross or Turner knew what had happened or why the shots were fired. He said that he initially believed that Too Sweet was the one that had done the shooting because of the suspicious way he had been acting. He stated that now, since reading the testimony in the paper and some of the court transcripts, he believes that it's possible that Jamie Brown may have been involved. Russell said that he is still adamant, though, that he did not see either Jamie Brown or AC Taylor on Linmar before or even after the shooting of the police officer. He said he did not recall seeing anyone or any vehicles leaving Linmar after the shooting. He said that he and Derek did see Officer Sealock go past them while they were standing outside prior to taking Keir Thornton home. If you guys noticed all of this that was said here, immediately I said, when was this interview? Because what is he talking about that he has transcripts and testimony? Like, how would he know what the hell has been said? What's going on here? And so immediately, that's what rang my little noggin. And what he's referring to, because this was written up on August 7th. So the murder was 3/15. So August 7th. He's referring to the preliminary hearing. Okay. And probably like seeing things in the paper, but there's no transcripts in a paper. Okay. So I don't know who's feeding him this information on what was being said, but we're going to get back to that. So Russell McKenzie is the person that puts Officer Sealock now up in. So go down here, you see Officer Sealock. Officer Sealock driving through Linmar. Now, again, nobody has timestamps on any of this stuff until I get to Keir Thornton. And Keir Thornton kind of saves the day here. When Keir Thornton was interviewed, Keir Thornton references a very important time by saying that when he was dropped off, because they're going to ask you questions. The police will ask you questions like, who was home in your house? Was it getting dark out? Do you remember what time it was? Like, these are all the things that you should be asking. What was on TV? You know, just trying to like get them to remember what time things were at. But if you notice, Aliquippa and Beaver period, they don't like to put times on anything. I mean, God forbid we ask anybody what time something was at when doing an investigation for a fucking police homicide. Well, I was able to come across Keir saying when he was dropped off, Wheel of Fortune was on. And his interview was on March 21st, just days after the murder. Okay. And that's huge. And you have to remember, Wheel of Fortune back in 2001, it was not during the 7:30 to 8 o'clock time spot that it is now. Wheel of Fortune back in 2001 had the 7 to 7:30 time spot. Okay. Which is everything. And which is doubling down right here with Keir Thornton's account. And this was happened March 21st, so just days after, okay, the homicide. He is remembering and saying, you know, this is his interview. And the highlight point is Wheel of Fortune. So if Wheel of Fortune was on, that means he was dropped off between 7 and 7:30, obviously, because that's the gap of the time of the program. And then, you know, Derek and Russell went straight back to Linmar. So then you have to put them getting back. And that's how I was able to do and confirm a lot of the timeline. And by the time they got back, they were standing around, and then within 10 minutes, shots are fired. And that goes perfectly with that 7:45 time frame, right? If they get back at 7:30, park the car, walk on over. I mean, it could actually be technically even before 7:45. And now, wouldn't it be very interesting that if Sonia Carter actually went over there looking for him and couldn't find him because he wasn't at the substation? Wouldn't that make sense? And then you got Darnell Hines bringing that just to the test. Oh yeah, I saw, Officer Carter there when I was sitting outside. And then she's confirming, yeah, I was there. Now, doesn't it make sense if she was saying, yeah, I was looking for him to go eat or something like that? Because that's what they always did. That's around dinner time from the 3 to 11 shift. Now, you got, now when Cassie and Young show up looking for him, remember, they went to the substation, they blew the horn, he didn't come out. Then they, drove around, they made it seem like that they never went inside. Do you want to know why they had to say that they never went inside? Because of Richard Phillips' testimony. The testimony that when he walked down there and knocked on the door to ask for help to pop a lock, he claims that he talked to Officer Naim at 8 o'clock. That is impossible because Officer Naim was already dead. And now we have it by the interview of Keir Thornton, Russell McKenzie, Derek Cotman, putting this timeline together. And we have it by the own account of the officers, Sean, saying, me and Cassie were en route to the Linmar sections of the city. Officer Naim had requested that we give him a call. We decided to just drive over and see him instead of the phone call. This occurred shortly before 8 o'clock. Shortly before 8 o'clock. You're saying that this all happened shortly before 8 o'clock. At the same time that shots are fired. But yet, Officer Naim's wand bad swipe thing goes at 8:12, 8:10, 8:12. Now, again, upon arrival, we activated the air horn in front of the substation to get Officer Naim to come out. He didn't. They don't say, oh, we saw Officer Carter. Nope. So we tried contacting him by radio, and he didn't answer. Now, a couple of my sources say that other people did hear that. But that's what people started to hear was calling of him over the regular channels. So, okay. Yeah. We figured he was making rounds, so we drove through the area and continued to call him via radio. We drove to the parking lot of the community building. At that time, a male juvenile approached our car and told us he heard gunshots in the area of the cemetery. That is a complete lie. That's a complete lie. Because that male juvenile's his interview, know nothing about a cemetery. Okay? And in fact, everybody is referring to the crime scene. They were pointing up over where those apartments were. Okay? So now, remember I brought this up to your guys' attention before. I said, if you're looking for an officer and you can't find him, why aren't you asking people, have you seen Officer Naim? Have you seen Officer Naim? If you're calling for him over a radio, but yet nobody's asking for him. It's kind of like when Chris Watts, in the Chris Watts case. And when I said, well, why didn't Shanann's mom ever call her before calling Primrose? Because you know that she didn't have her cell phone. That's why you didn't call her. When you know somebody doesn't have something, it just, you don't, and it's kind of like that situation here. No difference. You're not going to go around asking people where Officer Naim is, that you're looking for him. Because you're really not looking for him. Because remember, this is all afterwards that they're writing up this report. And this report was on 5/21, the day that Linda Barr and Kim Tesla went to the Alcova Police Department, had a sit down with all these police officers and said, hey, you need to get your reports in about, it was quote unquote this, Deputy Attorney General Linda Barr and Beaver County Assistant District Attorney Kim Tesla addressed the officers initially, then instructed them of the importance of submitting police reports to indicate what involvement each officer had in this case. The officers were then spoken to individually and asked about his or her involvement on the day of the shooting, as well as any other involvement in which they would have had in this incident. Each officer was then asked to prepare a report detailing his or her respective activities. And there was something interesting. To date, police reports have been received from the following Alcova police officers: Alston, Roberts, Cassidy, Edgell, Carter, Lemon, Chamberlain, Young, Schaefer, Sean Young, and then Shonda Meyer. Anyways, a name that's not on here, and this report was, typed up on 5/21, or was written up on 5. This happened on 5/21, but it was typed up then on 6/6. And Officer Sealock had not turned his in, and neither did Milton Ford. And those were two officers that were actually on duty. Now, we know, moving on, we're going to talk about here with Derek Cotman. The other thing I want to point out with Russell McKenzie and his girlfriend, they were pulled over, okay? Because remember, nobody was allowed to leave the perimeter. Like, nobody was coming into Linmar and nobody was leaving Linmar once the officers had arrived after the call out. Officer down, officers arriving there, and they were there so quickly. People were told to secure the perimeter. And Russell McKenzie and his girlfriend tried to leave and got pulled over because they were not letting people go. They were able to leave, okay? And they went and stayed at a hotel that night. and then came back the next morning. Okay. Russell and his girlfriend. And when they got back around like noon coming up in Linmar, they let Erica, his girlfriend, go back to her place. But then they took him to the Elko Police Department for questioning. Okay. And so then I wanted to see what Derek had to say, because Derek pleaded the fifth at Jamie Brown's trial. Okay. Derek had a lawyer. A couple of these people had lawyers. Mackenzie took a polygraph, and so did Derek. They took polygraphs. And I'll be talking about those today too. Okay. So, yeah, I'm just actually shocked that they took polygraphs, but let's talk about it. Let's see what he has to say, okay? Now, I want you guys to remember something. The police officers are the ones that claim, Sean Young and Cassidy, they're the ones that claim that they went to the cemetery to check it out. So there's nobody else giving that testimony except for them. It's a cemetery. Nobody sees you at this big, huge cemetery. So we have to go on their word that they did what they said they did, which was drive to the cemetery. Okay. And that's a big question mark for me, if they ever drove to the cemetery, because of this testimony, or I should say this quote unquote interview that led to a polygraph. And remember, so Derek Gottman and Russell McKenzie, they were all they were on them immediately. Derek, in fact, in a previous episode, the canine that followed the scent that night, right after the homicide, went to the porch where Derek was there with his girlfriend McCoy, and so the canine took Derek's scent and went to that porch. So here we go. Obviously, before you have your polygraph, you get interviewed, and it's supposed to be different people that do that. So Derek was interviewed at length by an officer, and during the pre-test phase of the examination, the following information was learned. Derek had gone to the Linmar apartments from his home in the early afternoon hours, perhaps around 1500 to 1600. So you're looking at, between 3 and 4 p.m. He walked from his home to the parts store at the bottom of the hill. He got a ride up the hill from Peanut Savage in a brown Chrysler. He dropped him off by the store, and he turned left, and Derek walked into Linmar. This is a normal thing for him to do, and he regularly hangs out at Linmar during the day. His mother and several other family members live in Linmar. Upon arriving at Linmar, he first went to his mother's and visited for a short while. He then went out walking around and met up with Russell and Ellis. They went to the middle area and hung out there for a period of time. Ellis left 2 times during the afternoon and early evening hours to go and get some 40s. Derek also advised that shortly after he had arrived and Russell went for a ride in a gray Honda car, they dropped off Keir Thornton at his residence. He claimed they were only gone for a short period of time, and when they returned, they parked down below the police substation, and he and Russell never left again until after the shooting. Derek alleged that he observed Two Sweet up at Linmar at least 2 different times. That's matching what Russell said, by the way. He advised that Two Sweet was dressed in all black and acting very spooky. He advised that he saw him the first time about 1 hour after Derek arrived in Linmar, and the second time about 1 hour before the shooting. Again, no one's talking about any times. When he saw Two Sweet the second time, Two Sweet said something to him similar to, "You didn't see me up here tonight." He felt that Two Sweet was up to no good. It may have been after Keir, but he was not certain. Derek advised that while he was at Linmar, he was mainly just hanging out in the middle. He denied that he ever observed Jamie Brown or AC Taylor. He said that he is a very close friend with Brown, and he frequently drives him around. He said that Jamie had no operator's license, and the police were always hassling him about this, so he frequently would drive Jamie around in Jamie's vehicle. He denied that he had talked with these men that day. He had not seen him for 1 or 2 days prior to the shooting. He said that he is certain that Brown was not in Linmar that day of the shooting because he was watching everything going on and didn't see him. He said that if he was in Linmar, he would have observed him. Derek advised that he and Russell and Ellis were all standing together by the big tree in the middle area. He advised that he had been standing in the area for some time. He confirmed that he and Russell were carrying guns, but only for their protection. He said that he said that this had nothing to do with this incident. He said that it was shortly after dusk that they heard the gunshots. He said that he thinks he heard 9 to 11 shots. And he thought that the shots came from the wooded area beside the middle. At first, he thought that they might have been shooting at them. They stayed in the same area, and in about 5 to 10 minutes, a bunch of police cars started pulling into Linmar. Okay. They figured that something was up, so he took his gun and Mackenzie's gun to his mother's apartment. While he was doing this, Mackenzie told him that he was going to drive around to see if he could determine what had happened. He got in the gray Honda, which is Eric Shoemate's car, and started to drive away as Derek was starting to walk towards his mother's place. So Russell got in the car to go see what was trying to go on. Derek's walking towards his mom's place. While at his mother's, he called his cousin to see if she knew what had happened. She did not. Then he and his mother and little brother went out and walked up towards the substation. They observed that the police had pulled over Russell and he was stopped in Erica's car. Russell said he was all right. While they were up by the substation, they heard people talking and heard that a cop had been shot. He alleged that this was the first time he had heard what had happened. He advised that when they heard this, he told his mother to go back to her house, and he went with her. He stayed there for several minutes, and then he walked over to Missy McCoy's place. He was standing outside her apartment when the police came over and arrested him. He advised that he was then taken to the police station and was held there until around 5 o'clock in the morning. That's when the dogs had tracked the scent and went to exactly right where he was on that porch. His hands were in his pockets. The police, pulled their guns out on him, said, get your hands out of your pockets, and then took him down. Derek alleged that nobody had made any admissions to him relative to this case. He repeated that he had never heard any rumors that a police officer was going to get shot, and he had no prior knowledge that this incident was going to occur. He denied that he participated in any way in the planning or commission of this incident. Following the interview, a zone of comparison series examination was developed with the following 3 relevant questions, to which the examinee answered no. 4 charts were developed relative to these questions. Question number 1, did you in any way plan to participate in the shooting of that officer? He said no. Were you present when anybody else made plans to shoot a police officer? He said no. Did you intend to use a gun in the commission of that crime? After administering the first test series, the examinee advised that the wording of question 3 troubled him. The question was changed to, on March 15, 2001, did you intend to use a gun in the commission of that crime? 3 additional charts were developed using this as the 3rd relevant question. After collection of the charts, they were analyzed, both agreeing that there was consistent and significant psychological responses to the relevant questions. It was these officers' opinion that the examinee was being deceptive when answering no to the relevant questions. These officers' opinion of the chart analysis was confirmed by the Polygraph scoring algorithm. During the post-test phase, no additional admissions were made by Derek. Now, again, this man right here, Derek, he pled the 5th at Jamie Brown's trial. So, you guys need to hear all this out. Darnell Hines, arrested at 9:30 that night after Officer Naim's murder. They put everybody that they could, Tiki Hayes, they brought down to the station. They were interviewing everybody supposedly up there. It was wild. Officers were using the N-word and calling people the N-word. It was just, I don't think a lot of people know what to do in a situation like that. When an officer is killed in the line of duty. And I don't think at the time that anybody thought, or at least those officers, or you're not thinking that one of your own could have done this either, Now, I had talked about the evidence that was laying out at the crime scene. And one thing that I wanted to review and to make sure everybody understood was Dan Cassidy's checkbook, was there. And it was, it would have been actually underneath the body of Officer Naim, but because his body was turned over to, they were going to attempt to work on him, that therefore then the checkbook was, then next to him, because when you roll somebody over, you're no longer on top of it. The other thing that wasn't clear in a report, because they used the wording of a jacket was over one of the shell casings. Well, that jacket that was actually over one of the shell casings, that laid there next to Officer Naim was Cassidy's jacket. So not only was his checkbook there underneath the victim, okay, but then covering one of the shell casings was Cassidy's jacket. Now, when I was going through Derek's statements, and he said, because this wasn't clarified, they stayed in the same area, and in about 5 or 10 minutes, a bunch of police cars started pulling into Linmar. Okay. They figured that something was up, so he took his gun and Mackenzie's gun to his mother's. Now, is he referring to, okay, because it's and the only person that could answer this would be him. So if he's listening and wants to ever comment on this, is he referring to, like, I guess my number one question would be, was there a bunch of Shirens like with these cop cars coming up there, or was it the first time? Meaning, you know, when Cassidy and Young went there, supposedly right after the shots had been fired at that, 7:50 time frame, or is what he's referring to is when all the police started coming after the body was found. And I think the only way that you're going to, because it's not, they don't do a good job of saying, a bunch of police cars started pulling into Linmar. My guess is when you're saying the word a bunch, it would be the second time. But again, he would have to answer that, not me. So again, the order that this all happened was they beat the shit out of Darnell Hines, who is borderline, has mental learning disability, like he's slower. And basically they arrested him for the murder of Officer Naim. Then it got to the two people. There was like two suspects. And I thought like real hard about this. Like, why were they so adamant about the two people? Oh, because your eyewitnesses, the shadows and everything like that, what they're seeing is that they were the ones saying that they saw two people. Everybody's referring to two people. And I just think that's really interesting that Sean Young and Cassidy were the only people that were doubled up that night. Roberts was by himself. Seelock was by himself. Carter was by herself. Edgel was at the scene at the store by himself. And the only two people that are put together would be Young and Cassidy. So now, because everybody's been referring, and in the reports there's two people. Well, by God, we need to have two people. So we need somebody with Jamie Brown. we need somebody, because the evidence isn't going to pin this on Jamie Brown. We need somebody that's going to say that they were there, so that we can get Jamie Brown. And that's where AC Taylor comes into play. Because there is no physical evidence tying Jamie Brown to this. There's no gun, there's no DNA, there's no nothing. In fact, everybody keeps on saying that Jamie Brown, nobody saw him. People saw Too Sweet, which I'm going to dedicate a whole nice little episode, of that, of him. But Tiki Hayes saying the shots were at 7:45. Keir Thornton talking about Wheel of Fortune. Everybody, no offense, that is black has the same timeline, except for the white people. They're the ones that saw Officer Naim. Nobody, Tiki Hayes said, he's like, come to think of it, he's like, I didn't even see Officer Naim that day. Didn't even see him. Then there's supposedly a 911 call because Too Sweet and a couple other guys are looking like they're going to jump Officer Naim. But that's just nowhere to be found. I mean, it will be found because there would be a paper trail of it, but that's not that's not brought up at court. And now I want to hear from you guys. Did Taylor ever get any jail time? If not, how come? He spent time in jail because they were all in jail waiting to go. AC Taylor was arrested. He's the next episode. He was arrested April 20th at Aliquippa High School. He was a senior at the high school. He was not 18. I believe he was a minor. And that was the other thing, is that he, I believe, was questioned without his dad at first. And then when they did get his dad, because the first time he was questioned, he was, they said that basically, if you don't give us what we want, we're going after your dad. So, AC Taylor isn't arrested until April 20th. Jamie Brown, remember, was arrested March 17th. And then there becomes a warrant out for the arrest of Too Sweet, which comes out March 20th or 21st. But it actually has nothing to do with the case, or does it? Too Sweet's, there's a warrant out for attempted murder on Kyle Gooseby, who, again, we're going to be getting into that episode. But I'm going to close out here with what Erica, the girlfriend of Russell McKenzie, okay, she was interviewed, because that's what brings us to the priest. And it also brings in the name Joe Percival, which you guys have heard. Joe Percival was the assistant chief police. He became the chief for just a couple of days, and then, was fired and all that stuff with the Rachel Del Tondo case. So Joe Percival his name is in this. And so Taylor he was arrested April 20th, and Jamie Brown got third degree, and and Taylor walked. He was acquitted. And that's what everybody believes, is that the jury was so afraid to come back, and Officer Naim not getting justice. So what they did is, because it was a capital case, he was up for, the death penalty. So what they did was they let AC, they didn't charge him, or I'm sorry, they didn't, find him guilty. And they found Jamie Brown guilty of third degree. Just a lot of fuckerage. Let's see. Now, Russell McKenzie, okay, he hired attorney Benyo, Jerry Benyo, who his wife was just murdered. If you guys were following along at any of the Beaver news, but Russell McKenzie's attorney, who was present at the time of the interview that took place, is Benyo. Now, all the stuff that ends up coming out with McKenzie and Cotman and Dwayne Ellis and Priest, last name Priest. What ends up coming out is that because they were never asked about it, so therefore they didn't, if you don't ask me a question, I can't answer it. Okay. Well, they came forward through their attorneys to talk about the fact that Too Sweet supposedly came to them, a couple of them, and tried to get someone to kill a cop. $10,000 up front, $10,000 when you finish the job, $20,000. So, and that's where Too Sweet's, name starts coming around in. Also, that there was eyewitnesses placing him up, in Linmar. His family lived there. And then, the hang up with everything with Too Sweet is that he said that he was getting on a plane with his mom and leaving to go to Tennessee because he had a hearing there, because him and Kyle Gooseby and another gentleman got pulled over with $155,000 in cash. They were going to Tennessee, and they were in Tennessee when they got pulled over. You guys will hear more about this when I do the Kyle Gooseby episode, because this is where it gets difficult to follow along. Okay. So, again, you have to think about this. You have officers that know that nothing is going to tie Jamie Brown to this case. There's going to be no digital. There's going to be nothing that's direct evidence, physical, like nothing, because he didn't do it. Okay. So how do we get him? Well, you're going to need to have eyewitnesses that are going to testify to that. And that's exactly what they did. Okay. And that's where AC Taylor comes into play. He was the co-defendant. And again, his episode's coming up and all of that. But there's nothing tying Jamie to this. And the only way they could get Jamie, think about this. No murder weapon was found. Nothing. And they covered up the fact that, well, what about Cassidy's checkbook being there? What about Cassidy's jacket on top of a shell casing? What? So guess who did Russell McKenzie's pre-examination interview? Trooper Lewis and Attorney Barr. Wow. Now, I'm not going to go all through Mackenzie's polygraph, but the part that that's important is everything that he said in his polygraph. It came back with this may indicate that Mackenzie was being truthful when answering no to the questions, which is, did you plan to participate in the shooting of a police officer? He answered no. That night, did you plan to participate in the shooting of a police officer? No. Do you know for sure if Jamie Brown planned to shoot a police officer? Again, answers no. And the polygraph came back. Indication that Russell was being truthful when answering no to those questions. Now, when Jamie Brown was in jail waiting, there was a guy that reached out to officers and wanted it to be known that Jamie Brown felt, he said, all I know is that the people that know what happened better say something. And the guy asked him, well, who do you think knows anything? And he refers to those two people, Russell and Derek. Now, this is where it gets a little interesting for me. And it's going to be the Joe Percival interview, as well as when he interviews Erica, the girlfriend. Something that was interesting is that, okay, so Joe Percival goes and he's interviewed on June 26, 2001. And Joe stated that he has known Russell Mackenzie for a long time, said they went to school together, and he considers him a good friend. Stated that he remembers the night of the shooting of Officer Naim because he was at home watching his 5-year-old son. He said that he and a friend, Cook, were planning on going to the club that night as soon as his sister got there to watch his son. Stated that the first thing that happened was Shushu paged him. Now, you want to know what's weird when I saw that? This mysterious Shushu paging. If you guys remember Tiki Hayes. Tiki Hayes and his, second time, third time, all these times being asked, and then up out of the blue, talks about, oh yeah, Shushu got a page. We were on the basketball courts, and I know that it was at 8:23. Right here. Stated that Shushu checked his pager, and he is sure Shushu told him it was 8:23. Stated that Shushu walked towards his apartment, which is located past behind the substation. It's infamous Shushu's pager. Because then it comes up again about Shushu paging him. And this time it was, the first thing that had happened was Shushu paged him. Stated that when he called Shushu asked him if he could go and pick up Erica, Russell's girlfriend. Stated that Shushu told him that Russell was being detained on Linmar, but he didn't tell him what all was going on. Joe said that he was going to go and get Erica, but then he remembered that he couldn't because the starter in his car was acting up. He said that he called Shushi back and told him the same. He said that he thinks that the first he heard about the shooting of the police officer was from his cousin, Patty, in a phone conversation with her after he had talked to Shushu. Joe stated that Patty lives in Plan 12 in Aliquippa. Stated that later that night when he returned home after being out, Russell and Erica were in Russell's vehicle at the curb in front of his house. He said that they talked some, but Russell didn't really tell him anything other than he didn't know anything about what went on in Linmar. He said that Russell then came to his house again on Saturday, and they talked of the shooting of Officer Naim. He said that Russell didn't admit anything to him, but he feels that there was something that Russell wanted to tell him, but just couldn't get it out. He said that basically what Russell told him was that he, Derek, and one of the Ellis guys, maybe Dwayne, were outside talking when they heard the shots. He said that after Russell was arrested, Russell did call him from jail. He said Russell still insisted that he wasn't involved in anything. He said that Russell also wanted him to stop down and see him and said that he had put his name on his visitor list. Joe said that he hasn't stopped to see Russell yet at the jail to date. Joe said that he also heard that Erica was at Paris's house on the night that Russell was arrested. Paris is one of two Sweet's brothers. Joe stated that he heard that someone who was not identified gave Paris money to pay for Russell's attorney. Joe said that he hasn't talked to Erica because he lost her phone number. He said that he knows her really well and it would not be a problem for him to call her and talk. He said that he has completed his associate's degree in criminal justice and is going to start on his bachelor's. And Joe wants to get into police work. He requested that this officer provide him the phone number of Erica and he would contact her and talk. He said that he would notify this officer should he learn anything, and that he would also visit Russell at the jail if this officer wanted him to do that. Joe said the main reason that he hasn't visited Russell already was because he did not think it would look good while he was applying for a police position. And then this is what I thought was weird is that interview took place in June, the end of June 26th. And then Erica was interviewed. And Joe was present during Erica's interview. So I don't know if that's what anybody would consider normal, but, you know, you don't usually interview people together. That way you can talk, compare everybody's stories. So I thought that was the first thing that was off with this interview. Why would Joe be, present? What do you guys think? I'm sorry, I haven't been really looking at chat. If you're going to attack, you're gone. Is Melissa just booting people? I love it. So again, this happened on just a couple days, 2 days after Joe's interview. This officer met Erica at Joe's residence, went to Joe's residence. She was interviewed at that time with Joe sitting in on the interview, which, I mean, I don't. And this is the information. She provided the following information. She stated that she has visited Russell at the Lawrence County Jail and that they have talked about what happened on Linmar the night of the shooting. She said that she actually told Russell not to tell her because she didn't want to know. She said that Russell has denied that he was involved in the shooting. She further stated that she did not feel that Russell was involved in any conspiracy or anything like that. She said that he did tell her that 2 kids up there knew exactly what happened, and he said that they were Priest and Ellis. She said that she actually talked to Priest the other day when she was out with her baby in the stroller. She said that Priest came over to her and wanted to see the baby. She said that she asked him what he knew about the shooting and that he should come forth to help Russell. She said that Priest just got this funny look on his face and told her to tell Russell if he hears anything, he would let her know, and then he left. She said that Russell also told her that Priest was running his mouth the day before and told him that a cop was going to get shot. Said that Russell told her that he told Priest to get away from him with that stupid shit. She said that she was home the night that Russell was arrested by an Alco police officer. She said she was upstairs when they came into the apartment and arrested him. And when she came out, the cops started hollering at her to get back in the bedroom, and she did. She said that a couple of nights after that, she was over at Paris's house, stated that her and Abby are good friends. She said the news had just come out, but she couldn't recall if it was the 5 o'clock or the 6 o'clock news. And this news stated that Too Sweet, when the news came on, she said that Too Sweet came running into the house hollering for Emily. Stated that it was her he was actually looking for, but he had her name wrong. She said that Too Sweet was asking her if Russell had an attorney and was starting to say more when Paris grabbed him and said, "Not here," out in the kitchen. She said that they went out into the kitchen to talk, and then Too Sweet left. She said that Too Sweet wasn't there for more than a couple minutes. She said that it was the same night that the television news announced that the warrants had been issued for Too Sweet, because right after he left, it was all over the news that the police were looking for Too Sweet. She said that both Abby and Paris told her that Too Sweet wanted to pay for Russell's attorney, and they have. She said that she and Russell haven't paid for anything for the attorney thus far, stating that she doesn't have any money and she's just going to go get ready to get back to work. She said that prior to taking maternity leave, she was waitressing at the Newfield. Erica said that her and Joe were planning on visiting Russell at the Lawrence County Jail the next day. They were to recontact this officer after their meeting. Yeah. Again, that is not normal. There's been not... The only time anybody has sat in on any interviews has been when a minor child was interviewed. Period. Until I came across the fact that Erica, the girlfriend of Russell, was interviewed at Joe's house with Joe present. Now, coming up on the next couple episodes here, you will hear about Cal Gooseby and the ooey gooey effect, it's called. AC Taylor and then episodes about Mann, Davis, and the police. So a lot of things are coming up. I firmly believe that if that wand swipe happened at 8:10 or 8:12, that somebody else did it. Also, the last thing I will say for the evening, and then I'll answer any questions, is that Officer Naim's belt was removed, okay? And I know that it's procedure. It's an officer's loaded gun. But this officer was murdered, and when the officers came there and the agencies came there to do the filming of the crime scene and to look at everything, they stated that before they could when they started to roll tape, that this stuff wasn't, like, his belt was already gone. It was already off. It was no longer there. And that's just, really unfortunate. Because would we know that I believe it's impossible to say if Officer Naim ever drew his weapon. Yeah, Melissa, here, this is what this spreadsheet's all about. So I'm filling in a lot of gaps here. Hopefully it's still showing, but yes, a lot of players. I know that you're supposed to remove, officers' guns and loaded, firearms and stuff like that, but I would think that in this situation, trying to get to my sheet here, that would actually stay. Here's a spoiler alert. Naim trial witness indicted. According to the indictment, Kyle Gooseby, 25, of Beaver Falls, conspired to distribute 500 grams or more of cocaine from September 2002 to January. And on June 20th, he unlawfully possessed 3 firearms in violation of law prohibiting convicted felons from having guns. The law provides for a maximum total sentence of life imprisonment, a fine of $4.2 million, or both. Gooseby testified for the Attorney General in the 2002 murder trial of Jamie Brown, who was accused in the shooting death of Elko police officer James Naim. Gooseby said he had heard his friend Brown make threats against police officers Brown was convicted of third-degree murder. Literally just months after, on June 20th, (2002). Also a spoiler alert. So on May 21st, remember Linda Barr and Kim Tesla go to Alquipa Police Department and say, hey guys, we need you to, basically get your reports in, buckle them up, do whatever, blah, blah, blah. And there was a list made of people that had their stuff in, and basically if you weren't on that list, you didn't have your report in. Well, just 2 days after that, there was a Beaver County Jail inmate by the name of Jeremy Wirt. And he said that he had information because he was in the hole with Anthony Too Sweet Smith. Okay, so 5/23/2001, right? That he was in Beaver County Jail. He was in the hole. And Wirt seemed obviously concerned about his safety for speaking with these officers. He advised that he is presently incarcerated for a DUI and is due to be released on 6/10, so just in like a month, not even. He advised that the charge is out of District Justice Schwarhart's office. Wirt provided information which was discussed strictly in the hypothetical sense. Wirt indicated this context that he had direct information from Too Sweet Smith, who told him all about the shooting of Kyle Gooseby. He also indicated that he had a discussion with Smith in which Smith indicated that he did have prior knowledge of the homicide of Officer Naim. This information was provided to Sergeant Swartzlander and Deputy Attorney General Linda Barr on 5/23. This information was given to Attorney General Linda Barr. That this guy has no reason he's there for a DUI. He's getting out in 3 weeks with his DUI. Like, he doesn't need some deal. He's not going and saying any of this because of, oh my God, can you get me out in 2 days instead of my 3 weeks that I have left? But this information was provided to Sergeant Swartzlander and Deputy Attorney General Linda Barr the morning briefing on the state, as well as via typed up this report. And Linda Barr is who is prosecuting Jamie Brown along with Tesla. So again, remember we talked about all the younger kids in an earlier episode, and now this episode's covering Derek, Russell. This is the age range. Kier. This is the Jamie Brown age range. This is your early 20s. You remember, all these people were arrested at one point or another and like being threatened to be charged with Officer Naim's murder. Okay. So, any questions about this episode? I mean, just a lot to digest, but the best news about this episode is there's a lot of things that can be cross-referenced that will help with a lot of the timing or the question marks surrounding what time things could have been at. Kim, my brother is a lieutenant at the jail. Oh, Lord. That's got to be an interesting job. Thank you, Missy. And I will add into your little timeline / Excel sheet here. Kim. Love it. Love it. Love it. If I was listening to this episode, my biggest question mark that I would probably have is, was it always planned that they were going to pin this on Jamie? You know, why Jamie? If you're just looking for a cop killer, you just do the work and the evidence will come to you. I mean, people were trying to tell you things, obviously, throughout this whole, about this whole investigation. And you also have to remember that they were arresting people, quickly without even doing an investigation. Like, this should have taken a couple months, if not more, to investigate before you're cuffing somebody. And I get it, though. I understand a lot of pressure. A cop was killed, but a cop was killed by one of their own. And that's what this is showing. Thank you. Thank you, Melissa. Had Jamie ever been in trouble? I mean, as a reason for them to pin it on him. I think what you'll hear from a bunch of the people that were interviewed, I mean, a lot of these guys, when they were hanging out outside, what do you think that they were doing? A lot of these guys were mixed up in selling drugs. Jamie Brown doesn't claim to be a saint, okay, but no, he doesn't go around killing people. I think, the best way to, to answer that is, did the cops have a vendetta against him? Well, if the cops are getting broke off, so getting paid, which they were getting envelopes. So like, hey, I'll look the other way and then you can keep doing your drug deals, but you're going to, I'm getting 500, a week or whatever. I'm just throwing numbers out there. So that's what these cops were doing. And then you got someone like Jamie Brown that's not involved, with, any of that type of shit. So these cops would shake down people, take their money, take their drugs, and then just, leave. People would get arrested. The money would go half missing. They're only getting then charged for like, a lower, if the money's missing and the drugs are missing, you're not able to charge these people with the type of charges that they should be receiving based on the quantity. So the best way to answer that is there were people that were selling drugs in Aliquippa at that time, and they had to answer to somebody. It wasn't their drugs. These are middlemen, I guess you could say. And Jamie wasn't working for anybody. Thank you, Canadian Mama. Yes, awesome live. Love so much information. Good thing for the timeline. Thank you. Yeah, so is there no doubt he's absolutely innocent in your mind? He's 100% innocent. No doubt. 0. 100% did not do this. It's very hard to follow. And that's why I'm trying to break it down as simply as I can and leave out some of the stuff that doesn't matter. But to understand Aliquippa, you have to understand, because it actually has a lot to do with today's cases that are going on there, because the stuff's still going on. You guys have to remember this. If you're an Aliquippa police officer back in 2001, okay, people have gotten promoted. People have moved on and up the ranks and into even different agencies. So if they were once with Aliquippa, now they're with PSP or they're with the Detectives Bureau. I mean, just like how Tesla was, here he prosecuted Jamie Brown. Now he's a judge. If the truth comes out in this case, it ruins the careers of a lot of people, and then questions surround everything that these people have ever worked on. And this is the number one question I have for Beaver County. Jamie Brown is up for parole. Grant him parole and hope that it saves you from all of this getting exposed. That's what I would do if I was Beaver County. Let him out on parole because he's up for parole. People are saying it's an LLC that Lana lists as a nonprofit. I don't have an LLC. No, sorry. I'm not sure why you listen to anybody, because they've all been proven liars. But that's not for this criminalist thinker. This is just not even the time or the place to even ask me something like that. Stupid. It's like Making a Murder Part 3. It is. Yeah, so that's the hard part for where you would think, okay, Beaver, you've messed up. You know you've messed up. Let the man out on parole, and I mean, you've already taken 21 years of this man's life. And see, in Pennsylvania, there's no restitution. So it's not like they have to worry about paying Jamie Brown some ridiculous amount of money. So, but then the other part is that Jamie Brown's also labeled as a cop killer. Why are you paroling a cop killer? That's the problem. And that's why, that's why they haven't. They cannot have us reopened because the town, Aliquippa, thinks that Too Sweet did this crime. That it wasn't Jamie, that it was Too Sweet. And I'm going to sit here and prove by the time that all these episodes happen that there's only one responsible party for Officer Naim's death. And that's the badge that he wore. So, but thank you for all the modding. Thank you for being here with the first episode that I did live for you guys. And I'll be up with the Tuesday follow-up and then episode 7 next Sunday. Stay safe. Be kind and chat love.